It is time now for Money Power Politics. And I want to start with what is going on in the stock market, even if you don't have a dime in it. Today, for the fourth day in a row, the markets fell because a lot of investors are getting more and more worried about a possible AI bubble. Now, recently, we have talked about how the company OpenAI floated the idea of the U.S. government backstopping the billions in investments the company is making. They have since walked back that idea, but just stick with me. In theory, the argument they are making is that it is not just about one company. It's about building out our national AI infrastructure so we can compete and win the global race for AI. But if things go south and the stock market falls off a cliff, then the government might need to step in to protect this bet on the future. But if taxpayers bail out the tech companies, then what's to stop those companies from taking even bigger risks? If everything works out, they win huge. And if it doesn't, we, the taxpayers, are left holding the very big bag. And that makes everything more expensive for the rest of us. So what is the likelihood that that could happen? Well, President Trump is already struggling on the economy. He keeps telling people that prices are down. It's the golden age of America. But what he's saying is not true. And it's certainly not how many people are feeling. They're worried about higher prices, about not ever being able to afford to buy a home. So if the stock market were to suddenly tank, and Trump sees it as a measure of his own success, there is every possibility that he will step in and help out these tech giants. Remember, these are the giants that showered him with campaign donations. Their CEOs had front row seats to the inauguration, and some of them have even joined him for private dinners like the one at the White House tonight. So let's discuss. Jim Bianco is the president and founder of Bianco Research, and Brendan Greeley is still with us. Jim, welcome to the show. How concerned are you with what's happening in the markets, knowing that our audience is not stock market savvy, but they certainly care?
Well, something unusual and that we haven't seen for a while is that these AI companies are all being priced, every single one of them in the market, as if they're all going to win, and they all can't win. And the problem is they are now almost half of the U.S. stock market is attributed to artificial intelligence in some form, either the AI companies, the power companies that feed them the electricity, or the capital equipment companies that make all of the processes for them. The last time we saw half the stock market become tied up in one single theme might be the railroads in the late 19th century. So this is unprecedented we've seen. And why does that matter? Because if the stock market's a measure of health of the U.S. economy and these AI companies stumble, everybody's going to feel it. Even if people that don't involve in the stock market, it's going to affect every single business, unlike any other industry or any other theme that we've seen before.
Almost 20 years ago, the government bailed out banks that people thought were too big to fail. What is stopping Trump from doing the same thing if the AI bubble bursts, Brendan?
I mean, the irony about that bailout 15 years ago now, 17 years ago, is that what got bailed out actually had value. Right. So all those toxic mortgage-backed securities were based on actual homes. And when the Fed bought them, over time, the Fed actually made a profit on them. Right. So these were real homes that were built in a bubble that left behind some legacy of value, both for investors and for the Fed and for Americans. What's getting built right now is rows of chips that depreciate within months and burn out or are superseded by even better chips, parked inside of warehouses that are parked inside of a business model that has absolutely no plan on how to make a profit. They do not know how to make these companies make a profit. There's something very strange about capital markets where they're willing, as Jim points out, to put anything into these companies because they think they're going to win. But let's say you win. What's the prize? A company with absolutely no hope of making a profit.
Jim, then what would be the consequences if the bubble burst? If we had to bail out these AI companies, what would it mean for the average consumer, the average taxpayer?
Well, first, in fairness to the administration, David Sachs, their AI czar, has come out and said there won't be a bailout. If one of these companies struggles, then they expect the other companies to probably pick them up for 10 cents on the dollar. In other words, not the government. But if it ever got to that point where these companies were struggling like that, it would depress the entire financial system. It's so big. These companies are tens of trillions of dollars in value, and it would be impactful to everybody, even if you're in businesses that are unrelated to AI. even if you're in businesses that have not yet adopted AI, it would affect your cost of borrowing. It would affect your business's ability to raise capital. It would affect the stock price of your company, which would affect confidence in your company. So everybody would feel it if you were to see these companies really start to struggle.
AI isn't just a big risk for Wall Street or our economy. It's a big political risk for Trump. At the beginning of his term, he promised thousands of new jobs would be created by these same companies that are now facing pressure. And it's not just these companies, right? Brendan, in the coming years or even months, tens of thousands of U.S. jobs could be permanently wiped out by AI. What is that going to mean for this president, who was the one who's going to be, I'm here to create great American jobs?
I think we see this cycle of hope every time there's a new technology. So economists said in the 1930s that with automation, that Americans are going to work maybe 1 day a week, and they're going to have to figure out what to do with all their leisure time. That's not how.
I'm waiting for that. I am waiting for that.
You, my friend, could never work 1 day a week.
That is true. That is true.
But I think that, what we're looking at now is there's so many promises of what AI is going to do for us. It's going to cure cancer. It's going to usher in heaven on earth. We're going to get universal basic income, and we're all going to have lots of leisure time. This is a story we've heard before. It never works out that way. And the reason it never works out that way is because when we have automation, when we have gains in productivity, they don't go to workers. They go to the people who have invested all of this money. And so I don't see anything about the power that's now arrayed around AI that even if the bet works out, I cannot imagine a world in which, out of generosity, they use all that power to make things better for all Americans.
Well, thanks to AI chatbots, we are all going to be able to get girlfriends. All right, Jim, I want to talk about something else. The idea was floated a week ago, and we just heard Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent talk about it again tonight. This idea, $2,000 checks going to the American people. And they said they would be getting the money not congressionally approved, which is what we saw during COVID, but it would come from money brought in from tariffs. When asked, if this would be inflationary, if people suddenly had $2,000 in their pockets, he said, well, we would be hoping that the American people would save that money. Give us a little historical perspective, because those stimulus checks weren't that long ago, and I remember exactly what people did. They went out and spent. The CEO of Robinhood Trading is at the White House tonight. He knows that when people got those $2,000 checks, many opened up accounts and started day trading. Talk to us about your thoughts on this $2,000 for all the American people.
Yeah, they saved it 4 years ago. They saved it in GameStop and the meme stocks and drove the stock market crazy is what they wound up doing. And you could go watch the 2023 movie Dumb Money if you want to be reminded of what happened when you gave people free money, that they wound up doing crazy things with it. And that's going to be the concern, because not only was it that the stock market in 2021 was going, haywire because of all this money. And maybe, in fairness, it was because we were in the middle of the shutdown and they were kind of bored and they didn't know what else to do except gamble in the markets. But beyond that, whenever you start giving people money right away, it does get spent. And when it does get spent, it winds up distorting the economy and it creates inflation. We saw that in 2022. Not all of the inflation came from the stimulus checks, but some of it did. And in an era today when we are most concerned about affordability and people are angry that they can't make ends meet, to give that kind of money out to wind up just pushing prices higher, because they never go down. Once prices go up, they might level off, but they never go back down, is going to be a net negative in the long run.